China's strategic economic offensive, the escalating trade war with the West. China's recent sharp reduction in the supply of germanium and gallium to Western countries has sent shockwaves through global markets, particularly in Europe, where prices for these critical minerals have nearly doubled. This strategic move is part of a broader economic confrontation with the West, particularly the United States, as Beijing flexes its economic muscle in response to increasing U.S. restrictions on advanced technologies. As the trade conflict between the world's two largest economies intensifies, experts believe that China's arsenal of economic weapons is far from exhausted. The mineral front, germanium and gallium as leverage. Germanium and gallium may not be household names, but they are indispensable to modern technology. These minerals are key components in advanced microprocessors, fiber optic products, solar panels, and night vision devices, technologies at the heart of both consumer electronics and military applications. By tightening its grip on these resources, of which China produces 98% of the world's gallium and 60% of germanium, Beijing has directly targeted a critical vulnerability in the West's supply chain. The impact has been swift and severe. Within a year, the prices of these minerals in Europe have nearly doubled, exacerbating production costs for semiconductors and other high-tech goods. This price surge is particularly painful for Europe, where alternatives to Chinese supplies are scarce and expensive. The United States, on the other hand, has been somewhat insulated by its strategic pivot to Vietnam, a country with sufficient rare earth reserves to partially offset the shortfall. A calculated retaliation, China's national security imperative. China's decision to curtail these exports was not made lightly. It was a calculated response to U.S. restrictions on the sale of advanced microchips and related manufacturing equipment, a move Washington justified as necessary for its national security. Beijing, however, saw it differently. By imposing its own export controls, China has signaled that it too will protect its national interests, using its dominance in the rare earth metals market as a strategic lever. The new export restrictions mean that germanium and gallium can now only be exported from China through a special government licensing process, effectively putting the West on notice that further escalation could lead to even more severe supply disruptions. This tit-for-tat escalation has not only driven up prices but has also injected uncertainty into global supply chains, particularly for industries heavily reliant on these minerals. The West's diminishing dominance, a shifting global market. China's near monopoly on the production and processing of rare earth metals is a significant geopolitical advantage. Although the West has long relied on cheap imports from China, this dependency is increasingly seen as a strategic liability. According to Vladimir Chernov, an analyst at Freedom Finance Global, China's share of the global rare earth market has declined from 90% in 2011 to around 60% today. This decline is partly due to China's own export restrictions, which have prompted other countries to explore and develop their own rare earth resources. Despite these efforts, China still holds a commanding position in the global market, possessing approximately 35% of the world's rare earth metal reserves, including critical elements like gallium, germanium, and lithium. Countries like Vietnam, Russia, and Brazil have substantial reserves, but their ability to quickly ramp up production remains uncertain. For the West, this means that any significant disruption in Chinese exports could lead to severe economic and industrial consequences, especially as demand for these metals is expected to rise with the growth of electric vehicles and renewable energy technologies. Beyond minerals, China's potential economic weapons. The reduction in germanium and gallium exports is just one front in a broader economic war. Beijing has a range of other strategies it could deploy to further pressure the West. Here are a few potential avenues. Rare earth metal restrictions. China could expand its export restrictions to include a wider range of rare earth metals, which are crucial for everything from smartphones to military hardware. This would exacerbate supply shortages and drive up costs for Western manufacturers, particularly in the tech and defense sectors. Solar panels and green energy components. China is a major supplier of materials for solar panels and wind turbines. By limiting these exports, Beijing could significantly disrupt the West's renewable energy goals, especially in Europe, where the transition to green energy is a top priority. In 2023, similar restrictions already led to a 15% increase in solar panel costs, highlighting the vulnerability of the green energy sector to Chinese economic policies. Automotive industry impact. The automotive industry, particularly the electric vehicle (EV) sector, is heavily dependent on rare earth metals like lithium. If China were to restrict these exports, it could lead to delays in EV production and higher costs for consumers. In 2023, lithium-ion battery prices surged by 20% due to supply shortages, a trend that could worsen if Beijing tightens its grip on these critical materials. Technology and electronics. Restrictions on rare earth elements could complicate the production of electronic components such as chips and transistors, further exacerbating the global semiconductor shortage. This would not only impact consumer electronics but also the production of automobiles and other high-tech goods. The global economic chessboard, fragmentation and realignment. The ongoing trade conflict between the US and China is more than just a bilateral dispute, it is a sign of the broader fragmentation of the global economy. As economic and geopolitical tensions rise, the world is beginning to see the emergence of two distinct centers of trade and influence, one led by the United States and its allies, the other by China and its partners. This realignment is forcing other countries to choose sides, with profound implications for global trade, investment, and security. In the short term, the West may seek to reduce its dependence on Chinese imports by developing alternative sources of rare earth metals and other critical materials. However, these efforts will take time, and in the interim, China's economic leverage remains formidable. For Beijing, the challenge will be to wield this power judiciously, using it to advance its strategic objectives without provoking a full-blown economic or military confrontation. Conclusion: a new phase of economic warfare. China's reduction in germanium and gallium exports is a clear sign that the trade war between the US and China is entering a new, more dangerous phase. As both sides seek to protect their national interests, the risk of further escalation is high. For the West, this means facing the reality of its dependence on Chinese resources and the urgent need to diversify its supply chains. For China, it means carefully managing its economic power to avoid triggering a global backlash that could isolate it economically and diplomatically. As the global economy becomes increasingly fragmented, the consequences of this economic warfare will be felt far beyond the boardrooms of multinational corporations or the halls of government. They will impact industries, consumers, and nations around the world, reshaping the global economic order for years to come.